and we connected on LinkedIn. I had no plans of passing by here, but you had mentioned let's get in touch, and through discussions we said, well, why don't we do something together, and I thought it would be great fun.
Hi, I'm Vibeke from Control Pro Risk Management, and I'm together with Alexander Larsen from Baldwin Global. And today you're going to tell me a little bit about risk maturity and how you can work with that.
Great. Well, risk maturity, for me, I find it a really useful tool. Now, initially when I started playing with risk maturity, I thought, okay, it's useful, 1 to 5 maturity ranking, great. But it wasn't until I started really using it and going into more detail and developing my own risk maturity models for each organization I worked in that I realized actually it has multi-uses. One of the main benefits for me is engaging the top leadership. So basically, if we start with the basics, the risk maturity is usually a 1 to 5 level where you're not mature up to perfection, and it's very difficult to get to that perfection. And I also want to add that you don't have to be at a number 5 risk maturity. No. Some organizations should only be at number 3 or 4. There's no need.
Why?
Well, because not every organization needs to go into the detail that maybe a bank needs to go into or an oil and gas company needs to go into. If you look at companies like Statoil, I believe they've changed their name, of course. But
Equinor.
Yeah. But for those of you who know it as Statoil still, they are extremely mature in risk management. Every decision they make, it's all based around risk management. A local authority doesn't need to go into that much depth. It would be counterproductive.
So it's a cost-benefit evaluation.
In saying that, you can adapt your risk maturity so that number 5 is potentially an oil and gas company's number 3.
Yes.
So again, I'm not coming here and saying there is one risk maturity model. There isn't. You adapt it based on the company that you're in, the culture you're in, which standard you want to use. Context, exactly. And just as an example, so I tend to use different components. So there's different components, maybe 5 components, and then 5 maturity levels. And each component, let's say infrastructure and governance. So that would include software, it would include or Excel spreadsheets, but it would also include what does the board require, what does a risk committee, is there a risk committee? Then you might have risk identification, which covers risk registers and how you identify risk across the organization, from basic risk register to something much more proactive and much more useful. Then risk assessment, then mitigation, maybe you would have business continuity as a component. So you can have any type of component you want, partnerships or stakeholders.
So the components that you find valuable to
exactly, to assess your maturity in terms of risk management. Then for each component and each level, you would have criteria that you need to meet in order to move to the next level. And again, that sounds tick boxy. I don't suggest it should be tick boxy. I think as long as you hit 70% of them, you can sort of say, yeah, I'm in level 2. And it's not an exact science. However, it does give you an idea, firstly, of if you run this exercise and you look at, okay, I've now built my risk maturity model and I've filled it all out, and now I can see what I've already done, where I am. So you can see where you are, you can see where you might want to be and what you have to do to get there. And I think that's key for explaining that to management. You wouldn't want to show them that detailed graph. You'd build a nice graphical version and you'd show to management, look, we're here just now. We can get to level 3, level 4, depending on what you would like us to do. But it's you that has to tell us where you want us to be. Then what you can do is, you can say, and if you want us to get to level 3, with the current resources, it will take this many years. Or if you give us more resources, then it could take maybe so many years, less years, if you want us to get to level 4 and so forth. It gives management a much better understanding of, okay, first of all, risk management isn't overnight. It's going to take time. Secondly, okay, we understand we don't need to get here overnight either. We can actually take it easy and get to the next level, and we also know how long it's going to take. If I want it overnight, I'm going to have to spend a lot of money and get a lot of risk resources in, and even then it's going to take maybe a year, not overnight.
Yeah, because you couldn't spend all your resources on risk management. You have other business to attend to. Yeah.
So it just gives them a nice visual view of where we are and what we still have to do, and it guides them, and they can give you a bit more feedback as to where they want you to be.
So it's really about creating a strategy for developing the risk management function or the risk management level you operate on in an organization.
Exactly, and I've used it as a sales tool.
Okay.
For top management, because again it's visual. I say, look, here we are, and then if they've already decided where they want to be, it can show progress. Look, this is where we were, this is where we are now, and it might be different. You might have each component graphically on a line.
I think I've seen them as spider diagrams.
Yeah, that's another way to do it as well. Yeah. And then you would have, this is where we are, this is where we want to be, and this is
then you have kind of mature on one level and very immature.
So it can also help focus. What it provides is a roadmap as well of how we get there. But one aspect that I want to include is, of course, because what we're talking about is risk culture. That should always be one component. If you have risk culture in there, it shows management that risk culture is an important part of it, and it also makes sure that we focus on that and measure that going forward.
How would you measure risk culture?
Again, it's going to depend on organizations, but it might be that everyone has been trained in the organization. It might be that everyone has had a deeper training. It might be that leadership have received special training. It might be that each risk professional within the organization has at least a professional certificate or something. It could be that, as we discussed, it's built into leadership, future leadership programs, or it could be any number of things.
In job descriptions or
things like that. That's just some examples. And it just lets us see, okay, where are we, what do we still have to do, and how do we get there? But the other thing I like about the risk maturity models is that it can be as deep or as high level as you want. You can use it internally as well. So you might have 20 departments, and you're able to measure them in terms of their risk maturity. You could create a league table in a positive way if you wanted to, but more importantly, not every department has to have a level 3 or level 4 maturity either. You can actually rank your facilities or rank your departments in terms of priority, maybe red departments, amber departments, and green departments. So green only need to have a risk maturity level of 3, amber need to have risk maturity level of 4, and the red ones need a risk maturity level of 5, for example. So there's so many multi-uses of the risk maturity model, whether it's selling it to top management, whether it's to get some view of where top management want you to be, or to measure yourself, or to find out what's our roadmap and build a risk management plan around what needs to, how we plug the gaps. I use it for a gap analysis. So when I arrive at a new organization, I'll say, right, this is where we are, this is where we want to be, and where the gaps are. So there's just a lot of uses, and I really like it. And that you can build it around ISO 31000, for example, but around your own processes. Just make it very focused. One thing I would suggest is, if you are going to use a risk consultant to provide a risk maturity model for you, make sure it's not a generic one. Make sure that they adapt it to your organization. Make sure they're not charging you a crazy amount for development because they've already got all the information there.
Very good. Thank you for good advice.
Thank you.